It's time now for the John Harris Podcast on the AirNetwork.net. Now, here's sports journalist extraordinaire, John Harris on the Air Network.
Welcome to the NFL Draft edition of the John Harris Podcast on the AirNetwork.net. I'm John Harris, joined by NFL scouting guru, Dave T. Thomas. Dave, what's going on, man?
Hey, buddy, how you doing? We're getting close over here, and the teams are all starting to buzz.
3 weeks. We're 3 weeks away from the NFL Draft, Dave. No time like the present to just get into it and really let you analyze the draft. We're going to talk about some sleepers. We're going to look at some teams' needs. But first of all, I just want to address what it is that you do and how what you do is just so unique from what everybody else does. I want you to just talk for a little bit about your philosophy as far as dealing with teams and how you talk with such confidence about players because you're actually in contact with teams about particular players, and a lot of times the teams listen to what you say.
John, I'll never forget when I started this thing, age 14, 1968. I'm sitting in a little dinky hotel in New York City holding a draft. 7 people show up to see the thing. Out of the 7 people, 2 of them were in the wrong conference room. now this thing has turned into the second biggest thing outside of the Super Bowl in the NFL. Thank God for the Internet, I guess to say, but unfortunately with the Internet comes along is a lot of what Donald Trump has been giving us in the White House, nothing but fake news. So we do out. Well, if you look at my history and all of the years that you've known me, I deal with the talent out there on the football field. I'm probably called the anti-draft analyst because, to me, the only process that the draft has is bringing new bodies into the team. I don't care if a guy's a first-rounder. I don't care if a guy's a seventh-rounder. I don't care if he's a free agent. I'm going to tell you whether that glass slipper fits and where it's going to fit because, obviously, if somebody wants to go out there and get themselves hiking boots, they're not going to do it with 6-inch heels.
Well, Dave, I want you to, we've gone over this, and I was just asking you, sometimes you'll tell me about a particular player, in this case, Kenny Golladay, who Northern Illinois receiver, who the Pittsburgh Steelers are really looking at, have a lot of interest in. Now, while he may not be a first-round pick, and that's what a lot of the draft people look at, who's going to be taken in the first round, there just has to be something going on here where you can talk so confidently about players. And you told me about the system that you work with teams, how you communicate back and forth with teams and bring players to their attention and how teams do respond to you. Just talk about that a little bit, how that whole process works.
Well, I call it my spiderweb network out there because everybody knows me in the league and knows my reputation out there. I'm Dr. Watson. I'll let them go out there and play Sherlock Holmes. The big thing for me is that once a ball player enters college, I better be prepared. I better be a Boy Scout, John. So I start putting together my book then. As the ball player starts developing or regressing, I continue my notes on it. You see, in this day and age of scouting, look what goes on. Everybody holds more importance on Indianapolis than they do on anything of that 1 to 4 years that kid spent in college. You go down to college and you look at the day scouts at what they're working. Their big thing is, let me get my questionnaire done. Let me grab a couple of film. Thank you very much, Coach. I don't even have time for a donut. I got to get to a next campus. I'm out on pro day. I spent the year out because my wife was sick. I didn't even think I was going to get back into this. I decided that my function is for 2018, not for 2017, except for dealing with the teams. So while they're out there getting all their numbers on pro day right now, I'm out there at spring drills, John. I want to see what's coming up next year. I want to see that talent. Case in point, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold right now at USC, outside of John Elway and Bo Jackson, is the only player that I've ever given a perfect grade as far as the scouting grade goes. I wanted to see the kid develop in his new system. They were changing the offense a little bit. So I was there during the first week. 2 weeks later, I traveled back. I wanted to see as they were going through scrimmages. Okay, how well did he grasp that system? How well did he pick it up? Is it adaptable for him? You know, no matter what great of an athlete out there, that athlete has to work in the system, and the coach needs to have that system to work for that athlete. So everything goes hand in hand when you're deciding. I know a lot of teams out there, John, put a lot of emphasis on what they call potential. Potential is like kissing your mother. If you do it for more than 3 seconds, somebody's going to go, I look at the thing is I need to see the development of the ball player. I need to see production from that ball player. Same thing in the NFL. If I'm an NFL general manager and I draft a ball player, I go with a 3-year plan. First year is like a redshirt year. That ball player has to sit down and digest that playbook. Second year, he has to apply what he learns. Third year, he better be performing, or by the fourth year, he's sitting out there on the unemployment line.
So tell me, you explain to me how the process works when you bring a player to the team's attention or scout's attention. Talk a little bit about how that whole
it works hand in hand. Works hand in hand. I deal a lot more with the area scouts than anything because the area scouts are the guys that have to go out there and do the grunt work. So if I'm sitting down and I'm doing reports and all of a sudden I get a call from a scout that's in the Dakota region, hey, Dave, I'm going into North Dakota State. Yo, do me a favor. While you're over in North Dakota State, are you going over to North Dakota University? Yeah. Hey, listen, do me a favor. There was a kid there that was there a year ago. Why don't you grab some film on that guy, man, and check it out and let me know what you think? Okay, David, let me go see what I could get on the guy. About a week or so later, hey, DT, man, this is what I got on the guy. Okay, man, here's what I got on the guy. So I'm providing him with my information. He's providing me with his information. I've established a network out there. I'm getting things where, John, there's 4,000 kids every year. There's no way in freaking hell that I'm going to be able to go out there and see every one of those kids. So I cherry pick the ones that I want to see, the schools that I want to go to. But I have to rely on those grunts, the area scouts, to tell me what they need. Those area scouts come to me and say, hey, Dave, I'm going into so-and-so. Anything over here I should be alerted on. When you have that network like that, a lot of things do not slip through the cracks on you, John.
So what happens then once you deal with the area scout? What is it? And say there's interest now from the team with the player.
After the area scout, I know the national scouts on the teams, and even though their area scout is squawking up on a guy, you may have that national scout going, well, you know, my sources indicate, and it's like, stay the hell away from Mel Kiper, mister. What I then turn around is I send that report out to that national scout. Hey, I'm sending you a 200-page report on here why your area scout is telling you to get your butt into an airplane and get out there and see that guy in the Dakota. So then the national scout goes out there and sees it. If the area scout likes the guy and the national scout likes the guy, obviously the scouting director is going to pick up on that. Now that one guy that either I found or that area scout asked me about, we got 4 people all of a sudden jumping on that ball player's bandwagon. By the time the season ends, the coach now has to take over, the position coach, the coordinator, the head coach. They're going to step in to try to make a decision on the player. Case in point, you take Golladay, who we discussed on the previous show. Golladay, when he went into Pittsburgh, showed up with a 242-page report in his hand. You saw the report that I had on the kid.
Yeah.
When that coach walks into the film room and sits down and wants to watch film on this kid, he has a complete play-by-play chart in front of him. He doesn't have to watch Joe Blow from Northern Illinois. He knows, okay, in the first quarter, at the 14:52 mark, 1st and 10 at the 35-yard line, here's a play that the kid is going to make, or here's a play where the kid is going to screw up on. If I could save that coach hours on end in that film room, if I could save that coach from nodding out and falling asleep from boredom trying to find that player on the film, I'm doing my job. The whole process for a coach is he has a limited amount of time to make a most important decision. That ball player that he is going to be stuck with or gel with over the years.
Now, one of the things I want the listeners to this special NFL Draft edition of the John Harris podcast, AirNetwork.net, Dave T. Thomas, NFL Draft Guru. You are working. You came back. You came back. You had kind of gotten out of the thing, and now you're back into it. I know you started out working more with New England and the New York Giants, but I know now you've told me that there are a lot more teams.
All 26 are back, John.
You're
all
back.
26
You're dealing with
are back.
them all. So this is
I'm
a guy,
dealing with them all, but there's sort of, how could I put it, a caveat on there? I'm dealing with them all after May 1st. Right now, I'm staying with my two.
So right now,
I'm honoring Laurie, John. That was my thing. I told everybody, and I even told the public. The first year since 1968, the NFL Draft Report is not out. Laurie played a big part in it. I'm Italian. We do one of those things. We mourn for a year and a day.
Your wife passing. It was. I know it took a lot out of you, and
John, I almost walked away from the industry. But I tell you one thing, it actually was a blessing because it rejuvenated me, because I was off the road for 2 years, and it frustrated the hell out of me because once I'm on the road, John, I am in my element. And as soon as I stepped on that first campus back in January, just to watch a little bit of drills going on in the training room, it all of a sudden came back. And now I am loving spring drills, and I am telling you right now, I am one spring chicken.
So just for the record, I want the listeners here to understand that right now, Dave T. Thomas has worked specifically with the New England Patriots and New York Giants. He's doing a lot of. So he has a good idea of what they're looking at and what they're not looking at and what they're looking for. And as of May 1st, he's going to have this type of contact with all the NFL teams. So the information that we're getting from him is not just something he's spouting off the top of his head or what some quote-unquote source told him. These NFL teams are reaching out to him for information rather than the other way around. I think that's an important distinction that people need to understand. The information you're getting here on theairnetwork.net regarding this draft, it's the real deal. It's not second, third, fourth hand. It's coming from, in many cases, the horse's mouth. Dave T., let's look at the draft itself. Just some thoughts going into it. How do you rate this draft overall? As far as you mentioned, Darnold, as far as him next year having maybe the highest rating since John Elway and Bo Jackson. Who are the highest rated players in this draft here? And do you consider it a good draft from an overall talent standpoint?
My top player is a safety. Like last year when Jalen Ramsey was my top guy, right now I'm going with Mr. Adams down at LSU. I would take him over any ball player in this draft. As far as quarterbacks go, obviously, I'm down at Texas Tech watching that kid, putting him through the fine-tooth comb and everything else. I look at this draft, if I needed a quarterback, he's the only one I'm taking in round one. I look at this as probably being the sorriest quarterback draft I've seen in years. However, in 2018, it could rival the 1983 edition when Joe Montana and them all came out. But when I look at the quarterbacks, too, well, everybody is saying, Trubisky, Watson, Kaiser, those are the names going out there. Mahomes and Webb are making a name for themselves. But the kids that really impress me, and this is where teams do their homework on, Gerard Evans from Virginia Tech. This is a guy you could get in day 3 that will more than likely develop into a starting quarterback. I look at guys that might make a position change. Mitch Leidner out of Minnesota, he was touted as the number 1 quarterback entering the draft among the seniors before the season. They brought in a new OC, the kid tanked. Now guys are looking at him as possibly an H-back. I mean, look at his numbers from the combines outside of the speed. He definitely has H-back numbers, and he's got that history as a tight end when he was in high school. You go down and look at a transfer kid. I mean, I'm telling anybody right now, probably the biggest steal on the draft is going to be after the draft. Just shoot over to northern Colorado and take that quarterback over there, Slaughter. Slaughter came out of southern Mississippi. This is a big kid, 6'5", 220 pounds, 4.59 speed. Reminds me of Kaepernick as far as athletic ability, but when I see the way that he slings the ball, hey, you look at Nathan Peterman over at Pittsburgh. This guy is a fantastic quarterback tutor that I would bring in on day 3 and see a guy possibly turning into a Tony Romo for me down the road.
What did you think about what Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly said about his quarterback Kaiser? Some people are upset about it. They thought he was taking some cheap shots at him. Okay, you tell me.
You got to understand one thing. You got to understand one thing. A coach, when he sticks behind his player to the point where it's ridiculous, it's sort of like Donald Trump giving a speech. You can't believe a word he says. Brian Kelly came right out and said what it was. I mean, we all knew. I mean, if you start going back and seeing the little one-liners, people are talking about Kaiser's maturity. This goes back to last year. I mean, we're talking about 2015, 2016. The kid didn't have any arrests, but how could I put it? To me, he reminds me a lot of Jamarcus Russell. Yes, sir, but what he does is no, sir, no, sir. I think he's the most overrated quarterback in this draft.
Now, a lot of people that are criticizing Brian Kelly on this are saying, is that really his role? Now that the kid has said he's leaving, is it his role to come out and say that? Should he? Does that help the kid? Does it matter at this point? If the teams already know that, what does that help or hurt his situation?
How would it help him if he sits down there and touts the guy and the guy tanks? He just called it as it is, John. Okay, you say you should never trash your own children out there. But if my kid goes out and murders somebody, what am I going to do? Kumbaya?
I mean, does that hurt? I mean, but people are saying, well, look, other kids and families are going to be looking at that and say, is that a kid? Is that a coach that we want our kids to be playing?
That's a coach I want. That's a coach that's going to tell my son, you're going to grow up, you're going to play football, and you're going to play football right, or you're not going to play football for me.
Okay,
honestly, if you go back and look at the quarterback a couple of years ago, outstanding talent, Zaire up in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Dog off the field. He ends up going to Connecticut. He ends up going here. He ends up going there. Nobody's ever heard from him again. This was a guy that was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school.
Okay, let's break his game down. What is it about Kaiser that needs work, that you don't like, and that you agree with Brian Kelly about?
Probably the most inaccurate quarterback I've seen since Colin Kaepernick. This is a guy that does not make his progression reads right. This is a guy that will force the ball into the traffic. This is a guy that does not think. This is a guy, to me, that is a lighter version of Jamarcus Russell.
Wow. But because of the value that everyone puts on quarterbacks, it's a good chance that he'll be taken in the first round. Is that accurate, or?
Then I go back to the A and the A+ thing again. If you got an A+ athlete out there, but you got a B quarterback, someone will draft a B quarterback before an A+ athlete because they turn around and think, "Oh, I need a quarterback." If you look at the money that's gone out there for quarterbacks, everybody says we need that franchise. We need that franchise. You know what? Give me a mechanic till you could find a franchise, but don't sit out there and do. Well, look at the Jets. The Jets are more than likely going to take another quarterback in the first round. This is after they make probably the most monumental mistake in the draft last year by taking Hackenberg, where they made a monumental mistake a couple of years ago before that when everybody knew that Geno Smith could not conform to a team concept.
So, but it's not going to stop because teams, instead of doing what they need to do and not worrying about the outside noise, are always going to react to, we got to get a quarterback and make mistakes instead of building a stronger base, having other positions strong, having a good offensive line, having a solid defense. We're going to go get a quarterback because we got to get one. Well, like you say, if there's not one worth wasting a first-round draft pick on, then don't take him.
Here's my problem. A lot of general managers, John, they'll sit down. They got their scouts out there for 4 years watching that guy. Comes time to sitting down for the draft. He's a coach that watched a kid once in his underwear, never in life, sat down and watched game film. And who's that general manager turn to when he's in the war room? What guy could you work with? Oh, I could work with that quarterback. Oh, really? You seen him once? And the guy was sitting around in his BVDs?
Dave T, we're going to wrap up our NFL draft edition of the John Harris podcast. Any final thoughts? Players that we should be watching? Any trends that we should be looking for? We're going to get back into it again next week, but anything to leave us with on this edition?
I say next week we're going to blast you with the sleepers out there. I'm going to tell you about the day 3 finds, the free agent training camp type of ball players out there that you should be alerted on, and why our scouts feel that these are hidden gems that are sitting out there on the football field.
Sounds like good stuff. I can't wait. Again, the great Dave T. Thomas, NFL scouting guru, a special guest on the John Harris podcast. You're listening to the airnetwork.net. Don't go anywhere. We'll be coming back at you real soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the John Harris Podcast. Join us again next week for John Harris exclusively on the AirNetwork.net.